Beneath our feet, a hidden world thrives. Trees, seemingly solitary, are anything but alone. A vast, intricate web connects them all. Not roots, but something far more surprising. Fungi, delicate threads weaving through the soil. A living network, a natural internet. Sharing vital resources, water and nutrients flow. Even sending warnings, a silent signal of danger. The Wood Wide Web, the forest's secret conversation. Listen closely and you might just hear it. The humble banana. A ubiquitous fruit enjoyed by millions daily. A good source of energy, vitamins, and a tiny secret. Unbeknownst to most, every banana possesses a subtle, almost imperceptible power. A power usually associated with clandestine laboratories and heavily shielded facilities. We speak, of course, of radioactivity. Within each yellow curve resides the isotope potassium-40. An unstable atom, slowly, infinitesimally shedding particles. Fear not. The radiation emitted is minuscule, less than what you receive on a short airplane flight. Less than the natural radiation in the very air you breathe. Yet it is there. A faint echo of the universe's nuclear processes contained within this everyday snack. A reminder that even the most ordinary things can hold extraordinary secrets. Of millions in hosting fees and licensing deals. Off-screen, Donald Trump was born on June 14, 1946 in Queens, New York, into a family already soaked in wealth and power. His father, Fred Trump, was a millionaire real estate developer who had built a massive housing empire across New York City. From a young age, Donald was ambitious, competitive, and drawn to power, often clashing with authority figures and teachers. At 13, he was sent to the New York Military Academy for discipline, where he thrived in a strict environment and rose through the cadet ranks. After 2 years at Fordham University, he transferred to the Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania, graduating in 1968 with a degree in economics. Donald joined his father's real estate business shortly after, helping expand their empire into Manhattan's lucrative market. In 1971, he took control of the company and rebranded it the Trump Organization, a name that would soon dominate headlines. Trump's first major success came in 1976, when he convinced banks to finance the transformation of the rundown Commodore Hotel into the Grand Hyatt. With bold vision and relentless self-promotion, he became a rising star in the world of Manhattan real estate. By the 1980s, he was plastered on magazines, his name becoming synonymous with luxury, ego, and excess. Trump Tower opened in 1983 on Fifth Avenue, a glass-clad symbol of ambition, complete with a marble waterfall and golden elevators. He expanded quickly. Casinos in Atlantic City, hotels, airline ventures, a football team, and even bottled water, all stamped with his name. But behind the gold-plated image, debt was piling up. By 1991, Trump's empire teetered on the edge of collapse with over $3 billion in debt and multiple business bankruptcies. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on the Trump Taj Mahal Casino, negotiating with banks to avoid total ruin. Between 1991 and 2009, Trump businesses would file for bankruptcy protection 6 times. Yet Trump himself never declared personal bankruptcy. He walked away from most failures with his lifestyle intact. In the 1990s, Trump pivoted to branding, licensing his name to buildings, products, and even stakes, often with little involvement beyond the logo. His fame exploded again in 2004 with the debut of The Apprentice, a reality show where Trump played the role of decisive billionaire boss. "You're fired" became a pop culture catchphrase, and Trump's brand of confidence and control drew millions of viewers. He used his TV fame to rebuild his public image, often blurring the line between business success and entertainment illusion. The show ran for 14 seasons, earning Trump tens of millions in hosting fees and licensing deals. Off-screen, his personal life remained turbulent. 3 marriages, multiple affairs, and a constant stream of tabloid headlines. He married Ivana in 1977, divorced in 1992, then married Marla Maples in 1993 before divorcing again in 1999. In 2005, he married Melania Knaus, a Slovenian model who would eventually become First Lady. Trump's name was now a global brand, attached to towers in the US, Canada, Turkey, the Philippines, and beyond. But critics argued much of his success came from inheritance, risky loans, and inflated self-promotion. In 2011, Trump made waves by promoting the birther conspiracy theory, falsely claiming Barack Obama wasn't born in the United States. The claim was widely debunked, but it catapulted Trump back into the political spotlight and earned him attention from right-wing media. That same year, he flirted with a presidential run, but ultimately backed out. The world wasn't done watching The Apprentice just yet. Behind the scenes, Trump had long considered a political career, and his ambitions grew stronger as America's divisions deepened. In June 2015, he descended a golden escalator in Trump Tower and announced he was running for President of the United States. His speech was instantly controversial, calling Mexican immigrants rapists and demanding a border wall. Pundits dismissed him as a publicity stunt, but Trump quickly surged in the polls by breaking every political rule. He mocked rivals, attacked the media, and used social platforms like Twitter to bypass traditional channels and dominate headlines. Despite zero political experience, Trump won the Republican nomination in July 2016, defeating a crowded field of career politicians. His opponent in the general election was former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, a political heavyweight with decades of experience. The 2016 campaign was chaotic, divisive, and filled with scandals on both sides. Trump faced backlash for the Access Hollywood tape, where he was recorded bragging about sexually assaulting women. Many believed the controversy would end his campaign, but it didn't. On November 8, 2016, in a stunning political upset, Donald J. Trump was elected the 45th President of the United States. He lost the popular vote by nearly 3 million, but won the Electoral College, shocking the political world and redefining American politics. Donald Trump was sworn in as president on January 20, 2017, becoming the first U.S. leader with no prior military or government experience. His inauguration speech painted a bleak picture of American carnage, promising to restore power to the people. From the start, his presidency shattered norms, firing cabinet members on Twitter, clashing with intelligence agencies, and attacking the press as the enemy of the people. Within his first week in office, Trump signed an executive order banning travel from several Muslim-majority countries. Protests erupted at airports nationwide as travelers were detained, sparking lawsuits and global backlash. Despite criticism, his base rallied behind his tough stance on immigration and border security. Trump appointed Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court in 2017, beginning a conservative reshaping of the judicial branch. That same year, he signed a massive corporate tax cut into law, claiming it would stimulate growth and bring jobs back to America. Critics argued it primarily benefited the wealthy and ballooned the national deficit. In 2018, Trump withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal, citing national security. a move praised by allies in Israel but condemned by European leaders. He held a historic summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, becoming the first sitting US president to meet with a North Korean dictator. While the photo ops were dramatic, no lasting denuclearization agreements followed. Domestically, Trump's presidency was defined by constant turnover. His administration saw record resignations and firings. He clashed with the FBI, eventually firing Director James Comey in 2017, a decision that triggered a special counsel investigation. Robert Mueller was appointed to investigate Russian interference in the 2016 election and possible coordination with the Trump campaign. The Mueller probe dragged on for nearly 2 years, producing dozens of indictments but no charges against Trump himself. The report stated Russia had interfered in the election to help Trump and that the president had attempted to obstruct justice, but stopped short of recommending prosecution. In December 2019, Trump was impeached by the House of Representatives for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The charges stemmed from a phone call in which Trump asked Ukraine's president to investigate Joe Biden's son while withholding military aid. It was the third impeachment in U.S. history, but the Senate, controlled by Republicans, acquitted him in early 2020. Trump claimed total vindication and used the trial to energize his supporters heading into the 2020 election. Then came COVID-19, a global pandemic that would kill millions and define the final year of Trump's term. He downplayed the virus early on, saying it would disappear like a miracle, and resisted wearing a mask in public. His handling of the pandemic was heavily criticized, with inconsistent messaging, politicization of health guidelines, and chaotic responses. Despite this, Operation Warp Speed, his administration's vaccine development program, helped deliver multiple COVID vaccines in record time. Trump contracted COVID-19 himself in October 2020 and was hospitalized at Walter Reed, returning to the White House days later in dramatic fashion. The 2020 election was held amid the pandemic, with record voter turnout and widespread use of mail-in ballots. Joe Biden won the election with over 81 million votes, the most in U.S. history, while Trump received over 74 million. Trump refused to concede, falsely claiming the election had been stolen through widespread fraud. He launched dozens of lawsuits across key states, but nearly all were dismissed for lack of evidence. On January 6, 2021, Congress gathered to certify Biden's victory as president-elect. That morning, Trump addressed a crowd of supporters near the White House, repeating false claims of fraud and urging them to fight like hell. Thousands marched to the Capitol, where rioters stormed the building, broke windows, attacked police, and disrupted the electoral count. 5 people died, and the Capitol was placed on lockdown in a shocking act of domestic political violence. Trump was impeached for a second time, this time for incitement of insurrection. He became the only U.S. president to be impeached twice, though the Senate again acquitted him. In the days that followed, Trump was banned from Twitter and several major social platforms for violating policies on inciting violence. He left office on January 20, 2021, refusing to attend Joe Biden's inauguration, breaking a 150-year tradition of peaceful transition. As he flew to Florida, his political future remained uncertain, but his influence over the Republican Party had never been stronger. Even out of office, Trump continued holding rallies, fundraising, and dominating conservative media. Polls showed he remained the most powerful figure in the GOP, a kingmaker for candidates and a potential frontrunner for 2024. He launched his own social media platform, Truth Social, aiming to bypass the tech giants that banned him. Trump's political war chest swelled with millions in donations from loyal supporters, convinced the election had been stolen. Investigations into the January 6th attack, election interference, and classified documents began piling up around him. But none of it stopped him from announcing in November 2022 that he was running for president again. By 2023, Trump was under multiple criminal investigations, but still leading in Republican primary polls. The stage was set for one of the most controversial comebacks in American political history. By early 2023, Donald Trump was no longer just a former president. He was the subject of multiple ongoing criminal investigations. Each case brought new legal threats, media firestorms, and political division across the country. One of the biggest cases involved his handling of classified documents after leaving the White House. In August 2022, the FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida, recovering boxes of government documents, some marked top secret. The Department of Justice alleged that Trump had knowingly taken classified materials and refused to return them, even after being subpoenaed. He was charged in 2023 with 40 felony counts related to obstruction of justice, false statements, and willful retention of national defense information. The indictment revealed photos of boxes stacked in ballrooms, bathrooms, and storage closets, shocking the public. Trump pleaded not guilty, calling the case a witch hunt and claiming he had the right to declassify anything he wanted. The case was set to go to trial in 2024, but it became tangled in legal delays and pre-election controversy. Simultaneously, Trump faced legal trouble in Georgia over efforts to overturn the 2020 election. In Fulton County, District Attorney Fani Willis brought a sweeping indictment against Trump and 18 co-defendants using Georgia's racketeering laws. The charges stemmed from Trump's efforts to pressure officials, including a recorded phone call where he told Georgia's Secretary of State to find 11,780 votes. The indictment accused Trump of leading a criminal enterprise to subvert the election. Trump again pleaded not guilty, calling the case election interference. As if that wasn't enough, a New York grand jury indicted Trump in March 2023 on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. These charges related to hush money payments made to adult film actress Stormy Daniels during the 2016 campaign. Prosecutors argued the payments were illegally disguised to influence the election, making them a violation of campaign finance law. It was the first time in U.S. history a former president had been criminally indicted. The image of Trump in a Manhattan courtroom, fingerprinted, flanked by Secret Service, and pleading not guilty, became one of the most surreal moments in modern political history. Even with 3 separate criminal cases in motion, Trump's legal troubles weren't over. In a civil trial in New York, Trump was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation in a lawsuit filed by journalist E. Jean Carroll. A jury awarded Carroll $5 million in damages in May 2023 and another $83 million in a follow-up trial for continued defamatory statements. Trump denied all accusations, claiming the trials were rigged and politically motivated. Meanwhile, the New York Attorney General filed a civil lawsuit against Trump, his children, and the Trump Organization for overvaluing assets to secure favorable loans and insurance. The case alleged that Trump inflated the value of his properties by billions of dollars to banks and insurers, amounting to financial fraud. That trial unfolded in 2023 and 2024, with Trump repeatedly lashing out at judges, prosecutors and court staff online and in person. Despite all the legal chaos, Trump's 2024 campaign gained traction. He held rallies across battleground states, framing the prosecutions as proof that the system was corrupt and afraid of him. Many of his supporters believed the charges were political, a deep state effort to stop him from returning to power. By the summer of 2023, Trump had emerged as the Republican frontrunner, steamrolling primary opponents and maintaining his grip on the party. Even with 91 total criminal charges across 4 major cases, his base remained fiercely loyal. He skipped the GOP primary debates, citing his lead in the polls, and focused on rallying voters directly. Trump's campaign became a juggernaut, part political movement, part courtroom drama, part media spectacle. His legal team juggled motions, appeals, and scheduling battles, while Trump gave speeches hours after leaving courtrooms. The question dominating headlines was no longer whether Trump would be the Republican nominee. It was whether he'd be a convicted felon by Election Day. The U.S. Constitution doesn't bar a convicted felon from running for president, and Trump used that loophole to rally support even harder. At times, it felt like Trump was campaigning against the justice system itself. Polling showed the country was deeply divided. Some saw a corrupt man avoiding justice, others saw a patriot being persecuted. Social media became a battlefield of memes, outrage, conspiracy theories, and fundraising pleas. Trump raised tens of millions off his legal troubles, turning indictments into merchandise and mugshots into branding tools. His team released Never Surrender t-shirts and coffee mugs featuring his Fulton County booking photo, which instantly went viral. Despite being under indictment in 4 separate jurisdictions, Trump swept the early primaries. He crushed challengers like Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley, clearing the path to his 3rd consecutive Republican nomination. The political world braced for a historic 2024 rematch, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, Part 2. But this time, one candidate was running with a criminal trial calendar that overlapped with the general election. Every appearance became a legal political hybrid, rallies one day, courtrooms the next. The stakes had never been higher, not just for Trump, but for American democracy itself. Supporters believed he was the only one who could save the country. Opponents warned that another Trump presidency could mean the collapse of institutions and the rule of law. Foreign governments watched with confusion as America's former president, and possibly future one, stood trial like a criminal defendant. Historians compared the moment to Watergate, the civil rights era, and even the Civil War in terms of national division and democratic strain. Trump's message was simple: they're not coming after me, they're coming after you. He positioned himself as the ultimate outsider, a warrior against corruption, even as the court cases mounted. Whether he would return to the White House or face conviction remained uncertain. But one thing was clear: no American political figure had ever lived a life this chaotic, controversial, and relentless. As 2024 unfolded, Donald Trump stood at the center of the most polarizing election in modern U.S. history. He was not just a former president or political candidate. He had become a living symbol of division, disruption, and defiance. Despite criminal charges, civil judgments, and courtroom battles, Trump pressed forward with his campaign, energized by the chaos around him. He held massive rallies, appeared at conservative conventions, and flooded social media with promises of revenge, reform, and restoration. His slogan, "Make America Great Again," remained unchanged, but the meaning had evolved. To his base, Trump was a warrior against globalism, corruption, and the political elite. To his critics, he was a threat to democracy, a man who normalized lies, conspiracies, and authoritarian tactics. His legal troubles only deepened the divide. For some, they confirmed his criminality. For others, they proved his martyrdom. One of the most surreal realities was that Trump could legally win the presidency, even from a prison cell, if convicted before the election. He wasn't just breaking political norms anymore. He was reshaping what the rules even meant. Trump's influence extended far beyond his own campaigns. He remade the Republican Party in his image, populist, aggressive, media-savvy, and fiercely loyal to him personally. Dozens of candidates branded themselves as America First, echoing his policies and style. Even out of office, Trump remained a gravitational force, pulling the party's center of gravity toward him. He inspired a new generation of political influencers, podcast hosts, and firebrand politicians who thrived on controversy and culture wars. Mainstream media couldn't ignore him, even when they tried. Every tweet, truth post, and courtroom step became a headline, a talking point, and a debate. Cable news ratings spiked whenever Trump was on screen, whether being cheered or criticized. He was banned from Twitter, then reinstated, banned from YouTube, then allowed back. His digital presence was impossible to erase. Books were written, documentaries were produced. Countless hours of content dissected every moment of his presidency and every word of his indictments. Trump dominated not just politics but culture itself, a figure too big to ignore, too controversial to unify, and too relentless to disappear. But the question remained, what would history say about him? Some saw Trump as a necessary disruptor, someone who exposed the rot in the system and forced uncomfortable truths into the open. They praised his efforts to challenge China, renegotiate trade deals, and appoint conservative judges. Others saw a man who degraded institutions, spread dangerous lies, and shattered the concept of shared truth. They pointed to the Capitol riot, the family separations at the border, and his admiration for autocrats as signs of deep harm. In academic circles, Trump's legacy became a subject of intense debate. Was he a populist leader or an authoritarian threat? A political genius or a lucky manipulator? Biographers and historians struggled to capture a figure whose actions constantly defied precedent and expectation. Meanwhile, Trump himself remained defiant, declaring, "I'm being persecuted because I'm fighting for you." He claimed victory even in defeat, framed every scandal as a plot and every loss as rigged. His businesses, once sprawling and global, faced mounting legal penalties and reputational damage. Properties like Trump Tower and Mar-a-Lago remained symbols, both of power and controversy. Some licensing deals vanished, others expanded in foreign markets hungry for spectacle. The Trump brand survived not because of its reputation, but because of its intensity. Even as lawsuits loomed and prosecutors circled, Trump floated new media ventures, books, and campaign slogans. He refused to fade, refused to bow, and refused to change. His children took on larger roles, Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka, each carving out their public paths, sometimes aligning, sometimes distancing. His supporters formed tight-knit online communities, some believing in conspiracy theories like QAnon or the idea that Trump was chosen by God. His critics organized political movements to defend democracy, push voting rights, and reject authoritarianism. Both sides saw Trump as a defining figure of the era, either its savior or its destroyer. In a way, he had already changed America forever. He blurred the line between politics and entertainment, truth and narrative, leadership and branding. He turned the presidency into a spectacle and exposed deep cracks in the nation's foundation. He challenged the courts, the press, the intelligence community, and the very idea of objective fact. Whether he returned to power or not, his impact would echo for decades. Some warned that Trump had opened a door to future strongmen, that his rise showed how fragile democracy could be. Others believed he showed how to fight back against a bloated, unaccountable establishment. His story is still being written, and like him or not, the world is still watching. 700 years, Rome and Persia waged an epic tug-of-war across the Middle East. Dozens of wars, tens of thousands dead. Nothing settled. Then, from the desert, a new force emerged: Islam. Prophet Muhammad united the tribes of Arabia into one powerful movement. After his death, the Rashidun caliphs exploded outward. Syria, Egypt, Persia, all fell in less than a century. The Battle of Yarmouk, the siege of Ctesiphon, the fall of Alexandria. Islam spread through decisive victories and smart governance. The Umayyads created an empire from Spain to India. Damascus became the capital of a new world. But power breeds division. The Abbasids overthrew the Umayyads and moved east to Baghdad, a city of gold and scholars. The Islamic Golden Age flourished, but rival dynasties like the Fatimids, Seljuks and Buyids fought for dominance. Then came the Crusades, Christian knights from Europe carving paths of blood through the Holy Land. The First Crusade took Jerusalem in a massacre. Muslims retaliated over generations. Saladin, the great unifier, retook the city. The Crusader states held on, barely, until the Mamluks and Ayyubids erased them with steel and flame. In 1258 the Mongols arrived, unstoppable, merciless, and hungry for destruction. Baghdad burned. The caliphate ended. From the ashes rose new titans, the Ottoman Empire in Anatolia and the Safavid Empire in Persia. Ottomans were Sunni, Safavids were Shia. Their wars were both religious and imperial, fought over Iraq, Azerbaijan, and eastern Anatolia. Ottoman Janissaries and Persian Kizilbash battled for centuries. Whole cities changed hands dozens of times. In 1514, at the Battle of Chaldiran, the Ottomans shattered the Safavid cavalry. It was a turning point in Islamic warfare. The Ottomans dominated for centuries, but empires rot from within. By the 1800s, Europe smelled weakness. Napoleon invaded Egypt. Britain and France expanded influence. The Russians pressed down from the north. In World War I, the Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers. Britain promised Arab independence if they rebelled. The Arab Revolt began. Lawrence of Arabia, desert battles, Ottoman railroads blown apart. But after the war, the betrayal came. The Sykes-Picot Agreement divided the Middle East between France and Britain. New lines, new flags, no justice, no peace. France got Syria and Lebanon. Britain took Iraq, Jordan and Palestine. Local rebellions followed. In Iraq, in Syria, in Palestine, crushed by colonial firepower. Meanwhile, Jewish migration to Palestine increased under British oversight. Zionist movements grew, tensions exploded. After the Holocaust, the world supported a Jewish homeland. In 1948, Israel declared independence. Arab armies invaded immediately. Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. The first Arab-Israeli war had begun. Israel survived and expanded. Over 700,000 Palestinians fled or were forced out. The Nakba, the catastrophe. In 1956, Israel joined Britain and France in attacking Egypt after Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal. Global pressure forced withdrawal. In 1967, Israel launched preemptive strikes against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, the Six-Day War. It seized Gaza, the Sinai, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights. The Arab world was humiliated. In 1973, Egypt and Syria struck back on Yom Kippur. They made early gains, but Israel turned the tide. The US and USSR nearly clashed. Oil prices spiked. The world trembled. In 1979, revolution exploded in Iran. The Shah was overthrown. Ayatollah Khomeini declared an Islamic Republic. That same year, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan. A new Cold War battleground emerged. In 1980, Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. The Iran-Iraq War was hell: trenches, human wave attacks, poison gas. 8 years, over 1 million casualties, nothing gained, nothing forgotten. Then Saddam turned west. In 1990, he invaded Kuwait, claiming it was historically Iraqi territory and accusing Kuwait of overproducing oil. The international response was swift. The US assembled a coalition of over 30 nations. Operation Desert Storm began in 1991. Precision bombing crippled Iraq's forces. In just 100 hours of ground combat, coalition troops expelled Saddam's army from Kuwait. But the Gulf War didn't remove Saddam. Sanctions followed. Iraq's infrastructure crumbled. Tensions simmered. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq again. The rationale: weapons of mass destruction. None were found. Saddam Hussein's regime collapsed. He was captured, tried, and executed, but Iraq fractured into sectarian chaos. Sunni insurgents attacked US troops. Shia militias backed by Iran gained power. Al-Qaeda in Iraq emerged, brutal, fanatical, and deadly. By 2011, US forces withdrew, but the conflict didn't end. From Al-Qaeda's ashes rose something worse: ISIS. The Islamic State blitzed across Syria and Iraq, capturing Mosul and Raqqa. They declared a caliphate. Executions were filmed. The world was horrified. The US returned with airstrikes. Kurdish forces in Iraq and Syria fought back. Iran sent militias. Russia backed Assad. Turkey launched its own offensives. Syria's civil war became a global conflict. Assad's regime, armed by Russia and Iran, bombed cities into dust. Rebels, jihadists, Kurds, Americans, Russians, Turks, all fighting different enemies in the same land. The human toll: over 500,000 dead, over 10 million displaced. Cities like Aleppo turned to rubble. Meanwhile, Yemen collapsed. In 2015, Houthi rebels overthrew the government. Saudi Arabia led a coalition to restore it. Airstrikes, blockades, famine. Iran armed the Houthis. Civilians starved, hospitals bombed. A humanitarian disaster unfolded. In Lebanon, Hezbollah grew stronger, more entrenched. It acted as both a political party and an Iranian-backed militia. Clashes with Israel in 2006 left southern Lebanon devastated. Since then, tension has remained high along the Blue Line. In Gaza, Hamas and Israel engaged in repeated wars: 2008-09, 2012, 2014, 2021, and again in 2023. Each round began with rockets. Israel responded with devastating airstrikes. Entire neighborhoods vanished. In the West Bank, settler expansion and military raids fueled resentment. The Palestinian Authority weakened. Iran's influence expanded through proxy groups: Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and the Houthis. Its Quds force trained fighters across Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. Israel responded with shadow warfare. Cyber attacks, assassinations, mysterious explosions in Iranian nuclear sites. The invisible war intensified. The Abraham Accords in 2020 offered a sliver of hope. The UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan normalized ties with Israel. But the core issue, Palestinian sovereignty, remained unresolved. Peace without justice was fragile. In 2023, that fragility shattered. On October 7th, Hamas launched a massive, coordinated assault on Israel. Over 1,000 killed, dozens taken hostage. Israel responded with overwhelming force. Gaza saw its deadliest days. Airstrikes flattened entire districts. Electricity, water, and food were cut. The conflict rippled outward. Hezbollah fired rockets from the north. Houthi missiles struck shipping lanes. Iran warned of escalation. The US deployed aircraft carriers. Russia issued condemnations. China called for calm. Across the region, protests exploded. Cairo, Amman, Baghdad, millions marched in fury. In Iraq, militias attacked US bases. In Syria, Israeli strikes intensified. The entire region edged toward the brink. But beneath the violence lies history. Thousands of years of war, faith, empire, betrayal, and resistance. Each conflict layered on the last. Each ceasefire temporary. Each peace agreement a pause, not an end. Today's Middle East is a mosaic of trauma, pride, vengeance, and hope. Iraq is rebuilding but fractured. Iran is defiant and isolated. Saudi Arabia modernizes yet wages war. Turkey balances between NATO and autocracy. Syria is a graveyard of dreams. Lebanon drowns in crisis. The Six-Day War of 1967 changed everything. On June the 5th, Israel launched a preemptive strike against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. Its neighbors had massed troops, closed the Straits of Tiran, and signed mutual defense pacts. Within hours, Israel's Air Force had destroyed most of Egypt's planes on the ground. It was one of the most successful air operations in history. In just 6 days, Israel seized the Sinai Peninsula, Gaza Strip, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights. The Arab world was humiliated. The defeat reshaped politics, military strategy, and national psyches across the region. For Palestinians, it was another blow. Over 300,000 more fled or were displaced. Refugee camps swelled. Israel now controlled vast territories and millions of Palestinians. The occupation began. UN Resolution 242 called for Israel to withdraw from the territories in exchange for peace. But the wording was vague. No peace followed. In 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in Judaism. Egypt crossed the Suez Canal. Syrian forces advanced in the Golan. Israel was caught off guard. But after initial setbacks, Israel counterattacked, pushing deep into Syria and crossing into Egypt's West Bank. The US airlifted supplies. the USSR resupplied Arab states. A full-scale East-West proxy war nearly ignited. A ceasefire was eventually brokered, but the psychological shift was profound. Arab nations proved they could hit back. Years later, the Camp David Accords followed. Egypt became the first Arab state to sign peace with Israel. It was a breakthrough and a warning. Egyptian President Sadat was assassinated by Islamists in 1981. Meanwhile, Iran was charting its own course. After the 1979 revolution, Iran's leadership declared opposition to both the US and Israel. Ayatollah Khomeini called Israel a cancerous tumor and cut all ties. Iran began supporting anti-Israel groups like Hezbollah and later Hamas. In the 1980s and 1990s, Iran's strategy became clear: support proxies to pressure Israel and deter US influence. In Lebanon, Hezbollah formed with Iranian funding. In Gaza, Iran funneled weapons to Hamas and Islamic Jihad. Behind the scenes, a secret war began. Assassinations, sabotage, cyber attacks, shadow strikes across multiple countries. In 2009 and again in 2015, Iranian nuclear facilities were hit by mysterious computer viruses, most notably Stuxnet, believed to be a joint US-Israeli operation. Iran denied seeking nuclear weapons, but inspections revealed advanced enrichment capabilities. In 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, the Iran nuclear deal, was signed. Iran agreed to limit enrichment and allow inspections in exchange for sanction relief. But in 2018, the United States withdrew from the deal under President Trump. Sanctions returned. Iran resumed enrichment. Since then, tensions have spiraled. Iranian scientists have been assassinated. Israel is widely believed to be behind many of the killings. In 2020, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, Iran's top nuclear scientist, was gunned down in a high-tech ambush near Tehran. Iran vowed revenge. Israel remained silent. The shadow war escalated. Tanker attacks in the Gulf, drone strikes in Syria, cyber warfare campaigns targeting infrastructure. Diplomats have tried to revive the nuclear deal. Negotiations in Vienna dragged on for years with no resolution. Meanwhile, Iran enriches uranium closer to weapons-grade levels. Israel has repeatedly said it will never allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon and will act alone if necessary. Military drills simulate long-range strikes on Iranian nuclear sites. The rhetoric grows sharper. Other nations watch nervously. Saudi Arabia and the UAE oppose a nuclear Iran. The US threatens all options. Europe pleads for restraint. Inside Iran, the people suffer. Sanctions crush the economy. Protests erupt. Women burn hijabs. The regime cracks down violently. Yet the nuclear program presses on. Underground bunkers, advanced centrifuges, expanding stockpiles. The fear: a single strike could ignite a regional war that draws in the world. In the background, Israel and Gulf states quietly coordinate. Intelligence is shared. Air defense systems aligned. A regional alliance forms, informal but real, all against Iranian expansion. And still, the Palestinian issue remains unresolved. Peace deals bypass it. Violence always returns. From Gaza to the West Bank, from Damascus to Tehran, the region holds its breath. One miscalculation, one rogue missile, one overreach, and the Middle East could erupt again, this time with consequences far beyond its borders. Israel remains a fortress, powerful, surrounded and divided within. Palestine is occupied, wounded and desperate. And still, the people live. They mourn, they marry, they pray, they rebuild. Some plant trees where missiles fell. Others teach children under broken ceilings. The Middle East is not just a war zone. It is the birthplace of civilization, of scripture, of humanity's oldest stories. But if peace is to return, it must be earned, not imposed. It must be rooted in dignity, not domination. Because until that happens, the wars of the Middle East will never truly end. This is the past. This is the present. Israel has just attacked Iran again, targeting nuclear sites, military leaders, and scientists. It is escalating into more days, with both sides attacking. And unless something changes, this will remain the future. In the vast and frozen forests of the Eurasian steppe, ancient Slavic tribes first began to form loose communities. Their lives were shaped by the rhythm of the seasons and the threat of raiders from the east. By the 9th century, these fragmented tribes were united by the Varangians, Norse warriors who sailed down the rivers and founded the state of Kievan Rus. At its center was Kiev, a trading hub that connected the Baltic with the Byzantine world. Orthodox Christianity was adopted in 988, forever shaping Russia's culture, art, and spiritual identity. The golden domes of new churches glittered over the Dnieper River as a new Russian soul was born. Princes built cities and palaces, but rivalries among them fractured unity. Kievan Rus splintered into competing states, each vying for dominance and protection. Then came the Mongols in the 13th century, sweeping across the steppe with terrifying force. The cities of Rus were burned, and survivors forced to pay tribute to the Golden Horde. For 2 centuries, Russian princes bowed to Mongol Khans. They collected taxes for their overlords and lived in fear of raids and punishment. Yet in the shadow of oppression, Moscow began to rise. Its leaders used cunning and loyalty to the Khans to gain influence over rival cities. By the late 1400s, Ivan III declared Moscow free from Mongol rule. He called himself Tsar and claimed divine right to rule all Russians. Ivan IV, known as Ivan the Terrible, expanded Russian lands with fire and steel. He crushed opposition with his secret police, the Oprichniki, and turned his wrath even on his own nobles. His rule ended in bloodshed and madness. Russia fell into the time of troubles, a chaotic period of famine, foreign invasion, and dynastic crisis. Polish troops occupied the Kremlin, and pretenders rose to claim the throne. The land groaned under war, starvation, and despair. In 1613, the Romanov dynasty was chosen to restore order. A boy named Mikhail Romanov was crowned Tsar, marking the birth of a new era. The Romanovs brought stability, but at a cost. Serfdom became law, tying millions of peasants to the land and to noble masters. Peter the Great changed everything in the late 1600s. Towering and relentless, he dragged Russia into the modern age. He built a navy from scratch, defeated Sweden, and seized access to the Baltic Sea. His new capital, St. Petersburg, stood as a window to the west. Nobles were forced to dress like Europeans and speak foreign languages, but Peter ruled with cruelty as well as vision, punishing dissent with violence. His reforms laid the foundation for a powerful empire, yet much of the population remained impoverished and voiceless. Catherine the Great continued Peter's work a century later. She embraced Enlightenment ideals while expanding Russia through war and diplomacy. She corresponded with philosophers and dreamed of reform, but when a peasant revolt threatened her throne, she cracked down with brutal force. The empire stretched from Poland to Alaska, a vast domain of ice, forests, and diverse peoples. Beneath its grandeur simmered unrest. In 1812, Napoleon invaded with the might of Europe behind him. The Russians retreated, torching cities and waiting for winter to strike. Moscow burned rather than fall. Napoleon's army starved and froze on the long march home. Tsar Alexander First emerged as a hero of Europe, but back home, demands for reform were met with silence. In 1825, the Decembrist officers tried to overthrow the autocracy. They were hanged or exiled, and the Tsarist grip tightened. Throughout the 19th century, Russia industrialized in fits and starts. Factories rose, but most Russians remained peasants, bound to backbreaking labor. Alexander II freed the serfs in 1861, but gave them little land or support. Hopes for justice curdled into frustration. Terrorists assassinated Alexander II in 1881, and the empire slipped back into repression. The secret police grew stronger, and dissent was driven underground. Marxist ideas spread among students and workers. Underground printing presses distributed revolutionary leaflets by candlelight. By 1905, pressure exploded into revolution. Workers marched peacefully in St. Petersburg, but were gunned down in what became known as Bloody Sunday. Strikes, mutinies, and riots followed. Tsar Nicholas II made concessions, but refused to yield real power. World War I brought disaster. Millions died, food ran short, and soldiers deserted. In 1917, the monarchy collapsed. The Bolsheviks, led by Lenin, seized power with promises of peace, land, and bread. They pulled Russia out of the war, then plunged it into civil war. The Reds and Whites tore the country apart. Famine, executions, and chaos reigned. By 1922, the Bolsheviks had won, and the Soviet Union was born. Lenin dreamed of a workers' utopia, but his death brought Joseph Stalin to power, and with him, an age of terror. Stalin collectivized farms and crushed resistance with famine and exile. Millions died in forced labor camps or mass executions. Cities rose with smokestacks and concrete, symbols of industrial might, but they were built on the bones of the broken. The 1930s were ruled by fear. Neighbors vanished overnight, and confession meant survival. Ordinary citizens lived under constant suspicion. A careless word or wrong connection could mean imprisonment or death. Paranoia crept into every home. Children informed on parents, and trust became a dangerous luxury. Despite this darkness, Soviet culture flourished in unexpected places. Artists, filmmakers, and composers walked a razor's edge between brilliance and censorship. The Red Army expanded under Stalin's iron hand. Tanks rolled across borders as the world edged toward disaster. Stalin's 5-year plans demanded impossible output. Industrial cities mushroomed across the landscape, but workers lived in crowded barracks with little food. Science became a battlefield. Engineers and scientists were both praised and purged, their fates often tied to the success of secret projects. Millions of citizens memorized slogans and songs praising the state. Patriotism was mandatory, and fear was ever present. Education was reformed to glorify socialism. Children were taught to love the state more than their families. Religion was branded as superstition. Churches were razed or repurposed, and priests were imprisoned by the thousands. The NKVD executed poets and peasants alike. Loyalty was rewarded with survival, not safety. Those who survived did so with silence. To speak was to risk everything. Then came the storm of World War II. Hitler's armies invaded in 1941, reaching the gates of Moscow. The Soviets held the line at Stalingrad in a battle of unimaginable brutality. Slowly, they pushed the Germans back. From the ruins of war, the Soviet Union emerged a superpower, but the price was 27 million dead. Entire cities had to be rebuilt from rubble. Survivors lived with memories too painful to name. The Cold War began. The Iron Curtain fell across Europe, and the arms race began in earnest. Spies moved in shadows, bomb shelters were built. Fear became the air everyone breathed. In 1957, Sputnik launched into space. 4 years later, Yuri Gagarin became the first man to orbit the Earth. The Soviet Union soared in science but struggled at home. Shortages and censorship ruled daily life. Leaders came and went. Khrushchev thawed the terror, Brezhnev restored order, and stagnation set in. Under Brezhnev, life was predictable but suffocating. Factories churned, parades marched, and dissenters disappeared quietly. Television showed a world of achievement, but behind the scenes, corruption and decay crept in. In the 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev introduced glasnost and perestroika. He sought to save the system by opening it up. Instead, it began to unravel. Republics demanded independence, and the economy collapsed. Protests grew from whispers to marches. The people saw a future beyond Soviet control. In 1991, the red flag was lowered over the Kremlin. The Soviet Union ceased to exist. The 1990s brought chaos, violence, and new wealth for the few. Oligarchs seized industries while pensions vanished. In 1999, Vladimir Putin rose to power. A former KGB agent, he promised strength and stability. He waged war in Chechnya, rebuilt the military, and took control of the media. Dissent was punished and loyalty rewarded. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. Sanctions followed, but Putin's popularity soared. The nation turned inward and back to tradition. Orthodoxy, nationalism, and history became central once more. Russia today faces a divided world. It is isolated by conflict but driven by ambition. Its past is a tapestry of triumph and tragedy. Its future, still unwritten, holds the weight of 1,000 years. From forest tribes to nuclear power, Russia's story is one of endurance. No matter the storm, it survives. Yet even now, beneath the strongman image, cracks widen. Demographic decline, brain drain, and economic pressures test the system. Voices of opposition speak through encrypted channels. Artists, writers, and youth resist in subtle ways. Russian culture remains rich, poetic, and haunted by history. From Tolstoy to Tchaikovsky, its spirit endures in creation. The Arctic melts while the army marches. Climate, geopolitics, and technology all collide at Russia's doorstep. New alliances form and old ones fray. China watches closely as Russia asserts its influence. Beyond the headlines, millions live ordinary lives shaped by extraordinary forces. Their stories, quiet or bold, carry the legacy of centuries. In a world more connected than ever, Russia remains distinct. its soul forged by hardship, its pride untouched by time. The tale of Russia is not finished. It marches forward, unpredictable and unforgettable. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel. Before the United States became a superpower, it was just 13 rebellious colonies clinging to the Atlantic coast. In 1776, those colonies declared independence from the British Empire and fought a brutal revolution to gain it. The war lasted 8 bloody years and ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1783, where Britain formally recognized American independence. The new nation's territory stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, and from Canada down to Spanish Florida. But this was just the beginning of America's hunger for land. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson made the deal of the century with France. It was called the Louisiana Purchase, and it doubled the size of the country overnight. For $15 million, the United States bought over 800,000 square miles of land from Napoleon, who needed cash for war. The Louisiana Territory stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains and from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada. To explore this vast new land, Jefferson sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark on a legendary expedition. They journeyed thousands of miles through uncharted territory, meeting native tribes, battling the wilderness, and reaching the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, American settlers were pushing westward, and tensions with native peoples exploded into a series of brutal conflicts. In 1819, the United States turned its eyes south and struck a deal with Spain known as the Adams-Onis Treaty. Under this treaty, Spain handed over Florida to the United States in exchange for settling a boundary dispute in the southwest. The land grabs continued, but the next conquest would come through war. In 1836, Texas declared independence from Mexico after a bloody revolt that included the legendary Battle of the Alamo. For nearly a decade, Texas was its own country, the Republic of Texas, until it was annexed by the United States in 1845. This led to war with Mexico, and it would become one of the most significant land acquisitions in American history. The Mexican-American War began in 1846 and lasted until 1848, ending with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Mexico was forced to surrender nearly half of its territory, including what is now California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. In a single treaty, the United States expanded its reach all the way to the Pacific Ocean. But America wasn't done yet. In 1853, the Gadsden Purchase added a small but critical strip of land in southern Arizona and New Mexico. It was purchased to make way for a southern transcontinental railroad and to clean up the border after the Mexican War. As settlers surged west, conflict with Native American tribes erupted into decades of warfare. Entire nations were pushed off their lands, forced onto reservations, or destroyed in battle. The idea of manifest destiny took hold, a belief that Americans were destined to control the continent from coast to coast. In 1867, the United States made another bold move by purchasing Alaska from Russia for $7 million. People laughed and called it Seward's folly, but they stopped laughing when gold and oil were discovered. Alaska would become a vital piece of the American puzzle, rich in natural resources and military power. After the Civil War, the push west accelerated with railroads, homesteading, and the destruction of the bison herds. The last major land acquisition came in 1898 when the United States annexed Hawaii. What started as a peaceful kingdom was overthrown by American sugar planters backed by US Marines. Hawaii's strategic location in the Pacific made it essential for America's growing naval power. By 1900, the United States had transformed from a small group of colonies into a continental empire. From the icy shores of Alaska to the beaches of Florida, from the deserts of the Southwest to the Hawaiian Islands, the land was vast and diverse. But every acre of that land came with a price. Some was bought in secret, some was seized in war, and some was taken through force and deception. The expansion brought freedom for some and destruction for others. It reshaped the world map, toppled nations, and built a global power. This is how the United States got its land. And every inch of it tells a story. Like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel. Beneath our feet, the earth is restless. Volcanoes are its pressure valves, powerful, unpredictable, and ancient. They are born from the chaos deep within the mantle. Driven by tectonic forces, their fury reshapes the world. Volcanoes are not just mountains, they are wounds in Earth's crust where fire escapes. The Pacific Ring of Fire circles the ocean with seething energy. It holds over 70% of the planet's active volcanoes. This ring stretches across Japan, Indonesia, the Americas, and Oceania. It is a chain of destruction and creation. In 1815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted with unimaginable force. It was the most powerful volcanic eruption in recorded history. Ash and gas were hurled into the atmosphere. Over 70,000 people died, and the world plunged into a year without summer. Crops failed, famine spread, and snow fell in June across parts of North America. The sun turned red through a smoky sky. In the year of our Lord 79, Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii and Herculaneum under volcanic ash. Thousands of lives were erased in a single day. People were frozen in their final moments. Their bodies became casts of stone beneath layers of ash and sorrow. Iceland sits on the mid-Atlantic ridge where continents pull apart. Its volcanoes are raw forces of nature and symbols of national identity. In 2010, Eyjafjallajökull erupted and grounded flights across Europe. Tiny particles of ash drifted through jet engines and threatened disaster. Hawaii rose from the sea because of a volcanic hotspot. The islands were built layer by lava and time. As the Pacific Plate drifts northwest, the hotspot continues to create new islands. From Kauai to the Big Island, each landmass is a living fossil. Kilauea is one of Earth's most active volcanoes. Its lava flows have engulfed homes, highways, and forests. Some eruptions do not just destroy, they threaten civilization itself. Supervolcanoes are rare but cataclysmic. Some volcanoes do not just threaten a region, they threaten the entire planet. Yellowstone is one of Earth's most dangerous supervolcanoes. It sleeps beneath a national park visited by millions every year. Its caldera stretches across 45 miles. Beneath it lies a magma chamber large enough to fill the Grand Canyon multiple times. It last erupted over 640,000 years ago. Before that, it erupted 1.3 million years ago and 2.1 million years ago. That pattern suggests it could erupt roughly every 600,000 to 700,000 years. Some believe it is overdue. If Yellowstone erupts again, it will not look like a fiery explosion. It will begin with earthquakes, ground swelling and venting gases. Then, without warning, the sky will darken. Ash would fall across North America, choking crops and shutting down power grids. The eruption could eject over 2,000 times more material than Mount St. Helens. It would cool the planet, disrupt weather patterns, and collapse global food supply chains. Cities across the Midwest could become uninhabitable. The world as we know it would be forever changed. It has not happened in human memory, but the evidence lies beneath our feet. Scientists monitor Yellowstone constantly, but if it erupts, we may only have days or hours to react. The question is not if, but when. Lake Toba in Indonesia erupted 74,000 years ago. It was so powerful that it almost wiped out humanity. Some scientists believe only a few thousand humans survived. The ash cloud darkened the planet and changed the climate for years. Toba left behind a vast caldera filled with water. The peaceful lake hides a violent past. Not all volcanoes roar on land. Deep beneath the oceans, volcanoes build new crust along the sea floor. Hydrothermal vents called black smokers release mineral-rich water. Strange life forms thrive there in complete darkness. These underwater volcanoes might be where life began. The heat and chemistry could have sparked biology in the deep. Around 1600 before Christ, the island of Santorini exploded. The Minoan civilization collapsed, and waves swept across the Mediterranean. Some say this eruption inspired the legend of Atlantis, a paradise lost to fire and water. In Central America, volcanoes tower over fertile farmland. The ash creates rich soil that feeds millions. But beauty hides danger. In 1985, Nevado del Ruiz erupted in Colombia. Melting glaciers triggered a lahar, a deadly river of mud and ash. Over 20,000 people died in the town of Armero. The warning signs were there. Few listened and many paid the price. Mount Fuji in Japan is a national symbol and a sleeping giant. Its last major eruption was in 1707. Ash blanketed the city of Edo, now called Tokyo. More than 3 centuries have passed, but the volcano remains active. In 1991, Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines exploded. The eruption dropped global temperatures by half a degree. Sulfur dioxide reached the stratosphere and reflected sunlight. It was one of the largest eruptions of the 20th century. Naples lives in the shadow of Vesuvius. Millions of people live within reach of its next eruption. Scientists use seismographs, gas sensors, and satellite data to monitor volcanoes. Yet even with modern tools, prediction is not easy. Iceland may someday split apart along its volcanic rift. New land is rising as tectonic plates drift slowly. Not all eruptions explode. Hawaiian volcanoes often flow with slow rivers of lava. But some unleash pyroclastic surges. These clouds move faster than hurricanes and obliterate everything in their path. Pompeii was consumed by one of these surges. Entire families perished where they stood. Despite the risks, volcanoes give back. Their ash enriches soil, and their heat powers geothermal energy. In 2021, a new island emerged near Japan. Born from fire, it reshaped the sea overnight. Volcanoes are not unique to Earth. Jupiter's moon Io erupts constantly with molten rock. Mars hosts Olympus Mons, the tallest volcano in the solar system. It stands nearly 3 times the height of Mount Everest. On Venus, Volcanoes may still be active beneath the planet's dense atmosphere. Across the cosmos, fire shapes planets. Volcanoes created our continents. They birthed the land beneath our cities. Without them, Earth would be a lifeless water world. They built the stage for evolution. The oxygen we breathe, the soil that feeds us, the islands we love, all owe their existence to volcanoes. Volcanoes are creators as much as destroyers. Their fury shapes the earth, and their silence hides deep power. They do not follow our rules or calendars. They answer to the pulse of the planet. So when you see a smoking crater or feel the earth tremble, remember this: you are standing on the edge of something ancient and alive. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story of Earth's volcanic soul with someone who needs to remember how powerful our planet truly is.
A day in the life of Audie Murphy, January 26, 1945. He's 20 years old. Wounded, exhausted, freezing. He orders his men to fall back, then climbs onto a burning tank destroyer, alone. Enemy soldiers flood the field. 200 of them, maybe more. Machine gun in hand, flames at his back. He holds the line for over an hour. Then he leads the counterattack. Still bleeding, still fighting. By nightfall, the field is silent. And Audie Murphy is a legend. Like if you enjoyed it, sub to see more. Share to let the world know about his epic life. You wake up not in a bed, but beneath a rough canopy of animal hides and woven grass, with the chill of the morning air biting through your fur cloak. The world smells like fire, smoke, earth, and the sharp scent of wet stone, and your senses are sharper because they have to be. There is no concept of hours, only the rising sun and your empty stomach. You grab a sharpened piece of flint, not for show, but survival, because today you must hunt or go hungry. The ground is cold and unforgiving, but you are used to it, and your feet are hard, your hands calloused, and your skin stained with the work of living. Language exists, but it is not made of long conversations, and it is quick gestures, guttural sounds, and looks that say more than words ever could. Your tribe is small, maybe 20 people if you're lucky, and every face is as familiar as your own hand. You know who is strong, who is clever, who you must protect, and who protects you because survival is not a solo game. Fire is everything, and it is warmth, safety, cooking, and the boundary between man and monster. At night, the dark is complete and terrifying, and you huddle with others, not just for warmth, but because anything could be out there. The sky above is massive and unbroken, and it is filled with stars you do not name, but you know them like a map etched in your memory. Your gods are not written or carved, and they are the storm, the sun, the animal you could not kill, and the child that lived when they should have died. You hunt with spears tipped in stone, but it is not just the weapon, and it is the understanding of wind, scent, sound, and movement that makes you a predator. Your prey is fast, wary, and deadly, and one mistake, and you are the one bleeding out under the trees. You eat what you can kill or gather, and roots, berries, fish, insects, and anything with calories is sacred. There is no shame in eating bugs, liver, or raw meat, and shame has not been invented yet. You do not think in terms of nations or borders, and you move with the land, and when it no longer feeds you, you leave it behind. You know the signs of rain by the smell of the dirt, the call of birds, and the way your own skin tingles. Your clothes are stitched from hides using needles made of bone and thread made from gut. You sleep in shifts because someone always has to be awake in case something with claws finds your fire. Pain is not a mystery, and when something breaks, you deal with it, and if it kills you, that is life. If you are injured, the healer chews herbs and places them on your wound while others pray to something older than words. You do not know medicine, but you know what plants to eat when your stomach burns or when a fever grips your body. Death is not feared but expected, and when someone dies, you mourn them with silence and the passing of their tools to another hand. You might not live past 30, but every day you do live feels earned. Love is not flowers or dates, and it is sharing food, shelter, warmth, and choosing someone to face the fire and the storm with. Partnerships are formed through ritual and survival, and a glance across the fire, shared tasks, or the decision to raise a child together. Children are rare, precious, and raised by all, and every adult is a parent in some way, and every child is everyone's future. You tell stories by firelight, not to entertain, but to remember, and you speak of the hunt, the storm, the ancestor who saw the sky fall and lived. Your art is simple but powerful, and it is handprints on cave walls, carvings in stone, and the first attempts at capturing the spirit of a beast in charcoal. There are no mirrors, but you know yourself in how others look at you and how you feel after each hunt or healing. You do not dream of riches, fame, or status, and you dream of a hunt that ends well and a night without fear. Conflict happens, but wars as we know them do not, and you fight for food, territory, or vengeance, and then it is done. There is no written history, but the elders carry knowledge in their bones, and their voice is law. You learn by doing, and every lesson is carved into your hands, feet, and scars. Your language evolves slowly, and it is built on need, rhythm, sound, and shared memory, and it is alive in every breath of the tribe. You live in tune with the earth because there is no other way, and every animal, every tree, and every river means life or death. You have never seen a city, a road, or a wheel, but you know how to read the clouds, track a deer for 2 days, and find shelter in a storm. Your world is dangerous, raw, and merciless, but it is also pure, immediate, and deeply connected. To be born 100,000 years ago is to live with no distractions and only the moment, the tribe, the land, and the fight to see another sunrise. If you survive long enough to become old, your story will be told by the fire, so those who come after know what it took to make them possible. Like, subscribe, and share if you made it through the Stone Age. Full documentaries and wild history await you on the channel. This is Knowing Things is Power. Carthage rose from the sea like a jewel, founded by Phoenician settlers from Tyre around 814 years before Christ. Its harbors shimmered with bronze sails and cargoes from every corner of the Mediterranean. The city was a marvel of engineering, protected by 23 miles of walls and a circular harbor that could hide hundreds of warships. At its center stood a military dockyard accessible only through a secret channel. Commerce fueled its power, trading silver, gold, ivory, glass, and purple dye across Africa, Iberia, and the Levant. It was a maritime empire born not from conquest, but cunning and control of the sea. Carthage's ruling elite formed a merchant oligarchy, with councils and judges rather than kings. Its senate of elders made decisions behind closed doors, where wealth spoke louder than war cries. Its religion was mysterious and ancient, devoted to Baal Hammon and the goddess Tanit. Rituals of fire and sacrifice were offered in great temples and tophets, hidden from foreign eyes. Naval strength defined Carthage, with fast triremes manned by mercenaries and seafarers from Numidia, Iberia, and beyond. Its fleet was the most advanced in the ancient world, guarded like sacred treasure. Rome, once a minor rival across the sea, watched Carthage grow with unease. In 264, the First Punic War erupted over control of Sicily, sparking one of history's longest and bloodiest conflicts. Carthage dominated at sea, but underestimated Roman resilience. Rome built an entire navy from scratch, training crews on land before daring to face the Punic fleet. They introduced the corvus, a boarding bridge that transformed sea battles into infantry brawls. This innovation turned the tide, and Rome claimed Sicily after 23 years of brutal fighting. Carthage paid dearly, both in silver and lost prestige. Its western provinces rebelled, and mercenary armies once loyal turned on their masters in the chaos that followed. But the Barcid family rose to reclaim Carthage's strength, pushing into Iberia to establish a new empire. General Hamilcar Barca laid the foundations, but his son Hannibal would make history tremble. In 218, Hannibal crossed the Alps with 90,000 troops, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants. He lost half his men in snow and battle, but emerged into Italy like a storm from the mountains. He crushed Rome's armies at Trebia and Lake Trasimene using terrain and deception. At Cannae, he executed a double envelopment, surrounding and destroying a Roman force twice his size. 70,000 Romans died in one day, including senators and consuls. Rome was paralyzed with fear, yet Hannibal did not march on the city itself. Carthage withheld reinforcements, hoping Hannibal's presence alone would win the war. Instead, Rome adopted Fabian tactics, avoiding battle and wearing Hannibal down through attrition. Rome struck back by invading Iberia, defeating Hannibal's brothers and seizing the silver-rich territories. The young Scipio Africanus emerged as a brilliant strategist, admired even by his enemies. In 204, Scipio invaded Africa, forcing Carthage to recall Hannibal after 16 years abroad. The two legends met at the Battle of Zama in 202, where Roman discipline and tactics broke the Punic line. Carthage surrendered, stripped of its fleet, empire, and independence in foreign policy. It survived as a weakened state, still wealthy, but now under Rome's shadow. Yet Carthage thrived in trade, quickly rebuilding its economy and influence. This frightened Roman senators who believed Carthage could rise again if left unchecked. Cato the Elder ended every speech with Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. Rome waited for a reason, and in 149 it found one in a dispute with a nearby African tribe. The Third Punic War began with impossible demands. Rome ordered Carthage to disarm completely and abandon its city to rebuild inland. The Carthaginians chose death over exile. They armed every citizen, melted gold for weapons, and built catapults from burned wood. The siege lasted 3 years, during which starvation, disease, and slaughter claimed tens of thousands. Carthage fought block by block, floor by floor, in what became an apocalyptic end. Roman legions finally broke through the walls in 146. They burned the city for 17 days and enslaved the survivors. The temples were looted, the libraries lost, and the culture buried beneath ash. Rome claimed to have salted the earth, ensuring no city would rise there again. Over 7 centuries of power were erased in a single act of annihilation. Carthage, once the rival of empires, became dust beneath Roman boots. But the memory endured. Hannibal's tactics became military doctrine, studied by generals from Napoleon to Eisenhower. Roman historians who celebrated Carthage's fall also preserved its greatness. They could not erase what had burned so brightly. The ruins of Carthage remain in modern Tunisia, overlooking the sea where its fleet once ruled. Columns rise from the dust, silent but unbroken. Carthage fell not from weakness, but from strength that threatened a rising empire. It was destroyed not for what it had done, but for what it could do again. Legends are not buried with stones. They live in fear, in fire, in names whispered across time. Carthage was not a city. It was a force of will. Dig deep enough and you will still hear it breathe. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to see future videos. Share if you would like to support the channel. Your body is home to trillions of bacteria. In fact, they outnumber your human cells. This invisible army is called the microbiome. It lives in your gut, on your skin, and even in your lungs. Without them, you wouldn't survive. They help digest food, protect against disease, and even produce vitamins. From the moment you're born, bacteria start moving in. Some come from your mother, others from the world around you. As you grow, your microbiome becomes uniquely yours. Like a bacterial fingerprint shaped by where you live and what you eat. In your gut alone, there are more bacterial cells than stars in the galaxy, each one playing a role in your daily health. These microbes talk to your brain. Through the gut-brain axis, they can influence mood, memory, and even decisions. Some scientists call your gut the second brain, because these bacteria produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. That means your happiness may start in your intestines. Feeling anxious? It might be your microbes sending signals. Antibiotics, while life-saving, can wipe out good bacteria. A single dose can set your microbiome back for weeks. Processed foods and sugar can harm your gut flora. Fiber, fermented foods, and diversity in diet feed the good bacteria. Stress can also weaken your microbial defenses. Sleep, meditation, and healthy routines keep them thriving. There's even research suggesting your microbiome affects weight. Some people gain more from the same meal just because of their bacteria. In fact, lean and obese individuals have very different microbiomes. And fecal transplants have shown promising results in changing metabolism. Your skin has its own microbial community. These bacteria protect against infections and balance your skin's health. Every handshake, kiss, or shared space exchanges bacteria. We are constantly blending ecosystems with those around us. Your pets influence your microbiome too. People with dogs tend to have more diverse gut bacteria. Even the air you breathe carries microbes. Cities, forests, oceans, each environment shares its own bacterial signature. Modern hygiene has its costs. While it prevents disease, it also reduces exposure to helpful microbes. Rural kids tend to have stronger immune systems than urban ones. Early exposure to a wide range of bacteria may prevent allergies and autoimmune issues. Farming communities have lower rates of asthma, all thanks to dirt and animal microbes training their immune systems. Scientists are exploring ways to restore microbiome balance. Probiotics, prebiotics, and even customized bacterial therapies are in development. In the future, we may treat depression or obesity with bacteria. Imagine a pharmacy of microscopic allies tailored just for you. Your body is not just yours. It's a vast ecosystem, a living planet of bacterial life. You are more bacteria than human. But maybe that's not a bad thing at all. Like, subscribe, and share if you're ready to embrace your inner microbes. Alexander was born in the year 356, before the Common Era, in the city of Pella, Macedonia, into a world of blood and ambition. His father, King Philip II, was a ruthless strategist who dreamed of conquering Greece. His mother, Olympias, was fierce and deeply religious. She told her son he was descended from Achilles and fathered by Zeus. As a child, Alexander tamed a wild horse named Bucephalus, the only one brave enough to ride it. His father said, "Macedonia is too small for you." At 13, he was sent to study under Aristotle. He absorbed knowledge of philosophy, warfare, medicine, and the epic tales of Homer. Alexander slept with a copy of the Iliad under his pillow. Achilles became his role model, a warrior who sought glory above all. By 16, Alexander was left to rule Macedonia as regent, while Philip campaigned elsewhere. He crushed a Thracian revolt and founded a city in his name. At 18, he fought beside his father at the Battle of Chaeronea. He led the left wing and shattered the sacred band of Thebes. In 336 BC, Philip was assassinated at a royal wedding. Alexander seized the throne immediately, eliminating rivals before they could act. The Greek city-states saw an opportunity to break free. Alexander marched south and razed Thebes to the ground, killing thousands and enslaving the rest. With Greece secured, he declared war on Persia. It was a bold move. The Persians had the largest empire on earth. In 334 BC, he crossed the Hellespont into Asia. He visited the supposed site of Troy and paid tribute to Achilles at his tomb. At the Battle of the Granicus River, he led a charge across the water against Persian forces. His men urged caution, but he wanted victory through boldness. The Persians fell back in chaos, and Alexander claimed his first major victory. He spared captured Greek mercenaries, but executed their Persian officers. He moved through Asia Minor, liberating Greek cities and gaining allies. His army grew stronger with every town he took. At Gordium, he faced the legendary Gordian knot. Rather than solve it, he cut it in half with his sword, fulfilling the prophecy in his own way. Meanwhile, Darius III prepared a massive army to crush him. The two armies met near Issus, where the terrain favored Alexander's smaller force. Alexander's cavalry slammed into the Persian center. Darius fled the battlefield, leaving his mother, wife, and children behind. Instead of abusing his victory, Alexander treated the captured women with honor. Word spread that this young king was unlike any other. He turned south toward Egypt, conquering coastal cities along the way. Tyre resisted, so Alexander built a causeway to reach it. The siege of Tyre lasted 7 months. When the city finally fell, he slaughtered 8,000 men and sold 30,000 into slavery. Arriving in Egypt, he was welcomed as a liberator. He founded the city of Alexandria, destined to become a center of learning and trade. At the Oracle of Siwa, deep in the desert, priests declared him the son of Zeus Ammon. The prophecy confirmed his divine right to rule.
Alexander still had much more to accomplish. He marched to meet Darius again, this time at Gaugamela. The Persians outnumbered him 5-1.
With brilliant tactics, he broke through the Persian lines and went straight for Darius. Once again, the Persian king fled. Alexander marched into Babylon and was crowned King of Kings. The treasures of the empire were his. He moved through Susa and into Persepolis, the ceremonial capital. There, in a drunken frenzy, he set the palace ablaze. Some said it was revenge for Persia's burning of Athens a century earlier. Others said it was madness. Alexander now ruled the largest empire in history, but he wasn't finished. He wanted to push east, to the edges of the known world. In Bactria, he fought brutal guerrilla campaigns in freezing mountains. He took a local wife, Roxana, to help secure his hold. But trouble brewed among his men. They were weary, cold, and homesick, and didn't like seeing Alexander adopt Persian customs. He began dressing like a Persian king and demanded to be worshipped as a god. Many saw this as betrayal. Some plotted against him. His closest friend Clytus criticized him drunkenly, and Alexander killed him in rage. Haunted by the murder, Alexander fell into deep despair. He isolated himself more and more. He marched into India, facing King Porus and his war elephants at the Battle of the Hydaspes. It was one of his bloodiest battles. The river swelled from heavy rains, and the elephants caused chaos. But Alexander's tactics won the day. Porus was captured, but impressed him so much that Alexander let him keep his kingdom. It was a rare moment of respect. His men, exhausted and fearful, refused to go any farther east. After 8 years of campaigning, they demanded to return home. Alexander reluctantly agreed. The journey back through the Gedrosian desert was catastrophic. Heat and thirst killed thousands. His army limped back to Babylon, broken but victorious.
Alexander began planning new conquests: Arabia, North Africa, even Rome. He dreamed of a single world empire.
Like most of us in our short lives, he did not get to finish all he set out for. He fell ill after a banquet. 10 days later, he was dead. He was only 32. The cause of death remains one of history's great mysteries. He left no legitimate heir. His generals, the Diadochi, divided his empire and descended into war. Yet his legacy endured. Over 20 cities bore his name, the greatest of them Alexandria. Greek became the language of science, philosophy, and trade from Egypt to India. This era became known as the Hellenistic Age. In some places he was remembered as a god, in others a tyrant. But in every corner of the known world, people remembered his name, Alexander the Great. He conquered more than just land. He conquered time. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel. Thank you for stopping by. Knowing things is power. In the year 1726, two noblemen stood face to face at dawn, pistols in hand. They weren't fighting over politics or power. They were dueling over a dessert. A pie so luxurious, so rare, and so personal that one man was willing to die for it. This is the story of a fatal recipe. A tale of stolen pride, almonds, and blood on the cobblestones. The man who started it all was Lord Algernon Blackstone. a lover of French cuisine and rumored to be obsessed with perfecting a single dish. An almond tart with a honey glaze scented with citrus and rose. He served it at a private dinner for a royal envoy. And the pie was the star of the night. But among the guests was Sir Geoffrey Hale, a rival noble known for his own culinary ambitions. Days later, the exact same pie appeared at a banquet thrown by Sir Geoffrey. Same crust, same fragrance, same garnished almonds, arranged in a perfect spiral. Lord Algernon was enraged. He accused Geoffrey publicly of stealing the recipe. Tempers flared, insults flew, and the only proper course of action for gentlemen of the time was a duel. At sunrise, they met in Hyde Park. Witnesses say Algernon fired first and missed. Geoffrey's shot struck true. Algernon fell. Geoffrey lived, and the pie lived on with him. Now, centuries later, we can bring it back. Let's make the almond pie that sparked a noble feud. Start with 1 pie crust, either puff pastry or buttery short crust. In a bowl, combine 1 cup of almond flour, half a cup of sugar and half a cup of softened butter. Blend until creamy. Add 2 eggs, the zest of 1 lemon and a teaspoon of rosewater. If you want a deeper flavor, add a pinch of clove or cinnamon. Mix it all until smooth and fragrant. Pour the filling into your pie crust and spread it evenly. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 Celsius for about 30 to 35 minutes until golden on top. Let it cool, and if you're feeling fancy dust with a little powdered sugar, take a bite and you'll taste why this dish was worth fighting for. It's soft but rich, floral and nutty with a light citrus lift. You get the sense that this was more than dessert. It was status, it was skill. It was pride on a plate. The pie didn't just end a life, it created a legacy. And now you've brought that taste of history back to life. If you enjoyed this story and want to taste more of the past, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share this with someone who'd duel over dessert. This is Tasting History, where every bite tells a story.
China's story begins over 5,000 years ago along the Yellow River. The Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties laid the roots of civilization with bronze tools, ancestor worship, and written characters. They believed rulers held a divine right called the Mandate of Heaven. It could be revoked through corruption or failure. The Zhou dynasty saw the birth of Confucianism and Taoism. These philosophies still influence Chinese society today. The Qin dynasty rose through violence and unity. Emperor Qin Shi Huang conquered rival states, burned books, and buried scholars alive. He forced millions to build roads, canals, and the First Great Wall. His tomb still holds the silent army of terracotta warriors. The Han dynasty brought stability, expansion, and glory. Silk flowed west to Rome, paper was invented, and Confucianism became law. Yet rebellion and famine eventually ended the Han's golden age. China shattered into chaos once again. The Three Kingdoms period followed and became legendary in Chinese folklore. It was a time of endless war and heroic generals. The Tang dynasty became a cultural superpower. Poetry and cosmopolitanism thrived as China reached new heights. China's capital, Chang'an, became one of the largest and most advanced cities on Earth. Foreign traders and scholars came from across Asia and the Middle East. The Song dynasty followed with inventions like gunpowder and printing presses. They created the first government-issued paper money in history. Their navy was advanced and powerful, but political weakness invited invasion. In the 1200s, the Mongols stormed across the steppes. Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, conquered China and founded the Yuan dynasty. Trade expanded across Asia and Europe, but Mongol rule brought heavy taxes and deep resentment. The Ming dynasty rose in rebellion and restored Chinese rule. They rebuilt the Great Wall and sent Admiral Zheng He's fleets across the oceans. His ships reached India, Arabia, and East Africa. They were larger than any European fleet at the time. Then they turned inward out of fear of foreign influence. Isolation and corruption weakened the state from within. The Qing dynasty emerged from Manchuria and conquered Beijing. They expanded China to its greatest size, including Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia, and Taiwan. The empire ruled over many ethnic groups. Han Chinese, Manchus, Mongols, Tibetans, and Muslims all lived under Qing control. By the 1800s, the empire stagnated. The West forced China open through war and opium. The Opium Wars with Britain shattered Chinese sovereignty. Western powers carved spheres of influence and took Hong Kong. Millions became addicted to British opium. The Chinese emperor's pleas were ignored. The Qing tried to reform but failed. The Boxer Rebellion was crushed by foreign armies. In 1911, revolution ended 2,000 years of imperial rule. The Republic of China was declared under Sun Yat-sen. But democracy collapsed into warlord chaos. Out of this storm emerged the nationalists and the communists. Japan invaded China in the 1930s. The Nanjing massacre left hundreds of thousands dead. Civilians were slaughtered and women were raped. Entire districts were destroyed. Nationalists and communists briefly united to fight Japan, but once the war ended, civil war resumed. In 1949, Mao Zedong's communists seized Beijing. Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists fled to Taiwan. Two Chinas were born. Both claimed to be the real government. Mao launched the Great Leap Forward to modernize agriculture and industry. Instead, it caused the deadliest famine in human history. Up to 45 million people starved to death. Some villages turned to cannibalism in desperation. To tighten control, Mao unleashed the Cultural Revolution. Red Guards destroyed temples and turned children against teachers and parents. Universities closed for years. Ancient knowledge was lost or rewritten. Mao died in 1976, and Deng Xiaoping took power. He opened the economy while keeping the Communist Party in control. Factories boomed and poverty dropped. China's coastal cities became engines of growth. But political freedom never arrived. The party's grip remained firm. In 1989, students filled Tiananmen Square demanding democracy. For days, they protested peacefully beneath a statue of the goddess of democracy. Then the tanks came. Soldiers opened fire on the crowds. The true death toll is unknown. One man stood before a tank and became a symbol around the world. Inside China, the massacre is erased. Searching Tiananmen or Tank Man is blocked. China's digital firewall bans Google, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. The state monitors every post and every phone. Millions use government-run apps that track movement and conversations. Social credit scores affect travel and employment. Meanwhile, Taiwan flourished into a thriving democracy. It holds elections, issues passports, and controls its own military. China still claims Taiwan as a breakaway province. It vows to retake the island by force if necessary. In the South China Sea, China built military bases on artificial islands. It claimed almost the entire region using the 9-dash line. International courts ruled the claim invalid. China refused to back down. Its ships confront Vietnamese and Filipino vessels regularly. Tensions with the United States continue to rise. In Xinjiang, over 1 million Uyghur Muslims have been detained. Reports describe forced labor, brainwashing, and sterilization. Mosques have been demolished. Children are separated from families and sent to state-run boarding schools. The government calls it counterterrorism. Critics call it cultural genocide. Tibet remains under tight control. The Dalai Lama lives in exile and protests are brutally crushed. Religious practices are tightly monitored. Foreign journalists are rarely allowed in. In Hong Kong, protests erupted in 2019 against a new extradition law. China responded with mass arrests and national security crackdowns. Pro-democracy activists have been silenced or exiled. Newspapers have been shut down or censored. The one country, two systems promise is gone. Hong Kong's freedoms are fading fast. Despite controversy, China is rising fast. It leads in AI infrastructure and global influence. The Belt and Road Initiative builds railways, ports, and highways around the world. Some fear it traps nations in debt and dependency. At home, China faces growing pressure. Youth unemployment is rising and censorship tightens. Nationalism is high, but so is unrest. The future remains uncertain. Will China become the world's dominant superpower, or will its internal contradictions bring it down? China's past is vast and violent. Its future could reshape the entire world. Like if you learned something, subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel.
The American Civil War. A brutal conflict that shaped the soul of a nation. This is the story of how the United States of America tore itself apart, and what it took to stitch itself back together. It is a war still misunderstood, still debated, and still alive in the conscience of a country it nearly destroyed. This war was not inevitable, but it was years in the making. It was not simply North against South. It was economy against economy, future against past, and freedom against bondage. Slavery had become the spine of the Southern economy. It was embedded in every law, every institution. Millions of black men, women, and children were considered property. They had no rights, no voice, no protection. Meanwhile, the North was changing rapidly. Factories were rising. Immigrants were pouring in. Cities were growing. There were still racists in the North. But the North did not depend on slavery to survive. And more people were calling for its end. Laws tried to calm the storm. The Missouri Compromise admitted Missouri as a slave state and Maine as free. The Compromise of 1850 included the Fugitive Slave Act, angering many in the North. The Kansas-Nebraska Act opened new lands to slavery by popular vote. Bleeding Kansas erupted in violence. It became clear. Compromise was failing. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision declared that no black person could ever be a citizen. That decision struck like thunder. It confirmed to millions that the system was deeply corrupted. Then came John Brown, an abolitionist who believed slavery would only end through bloodshed. In 1859, he led a raid on a federal armory at Harper's Ferry. He wanted to spark a slave revolt. He failed and was executed. But in death, he became a symbol, a martyr to abolitionists, a terrorist to the South. The election of 1860 was the final fracture. Abraham Lincoln won the presidency without carrying a single Southern state. The South panicked. They believed Lincoln would abolish slavery outright. South Carolina was the first to leave the Union. 10 more states followed. In early 1861, they formed the Confederate States of America. They elected Jefferson Davis as their president, and they began seizing federal property within their borders. Then came Fort Sumter, a Union fort in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. Confederate forces surrounded it and demanded surrender. When the Union refused, they opened fire. The American Civil War had begun. Many believed the war would last weeks. Instead, it lasted 4 years. it became a grinding, bitter and costly struggle. At the First Battle of Bull Run, Union troops panicked and fled. It was a wake-up call. The South would not be easily defeated. At Antietam, over 23,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing in a single day. It remains the bloodiest day in American history. The dead lay in rows, unburied, untouched. The scale of death was staggering. Gettysburg saw 3 days of fighting and over 50,000 casualties. It marked the high water mark of the Confederacy. After Gettysburg, the South would never again launch a major offensive in the North. In the West, Union forces captured New Orleans and took control of the Mississippi River. General Ulysses S. Grant laid siege to Vicksburg and starved the city into surrender. This cut the Confederacy in half. General William Tecumseh Sherman then began his march to the sea. He destroyed railroads, burned crops, and tore through Georgia. He practiced total war, aiming to break the South's ability and will to fight. Meanwhile, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states were free. It did not immediately end slavery. But it changed the purpose of the war. Now the Union fought not only for survival, but for freedom. Black men rushed to enlist. Over 180,000 served in the Union Army. They fought with courage. They faced death not only from bullets, but from execution or re-enslavement if captured. Yet they fought. For their people. For dignity. For the future. The Confederacy hoped for help from Europe. They believed cotton would bring them allies. But after the Emancipation Proclamation, Britain and France stepped back. They would not support a war for slavery. The war continued to drag on. The South's resources dried up. Its men were exhausted. Grant pushed forward with relentless pressure. He understood that victory would come not just through strategy, but through attrition. In 1865, Union forces captured Richmond, the Confederate capital. Robert E. Lee tried to escape west. But his army was surrounded. On April 9, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse, he surrendered to Grant. Just 5 days later, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Shot in the back of the head at Ford's Theater. He did not live to see the peace he had fought for. The South lay in ruins. Cities were burned. Fields left fallow. Millions of people were dead, wounded, orphaned, or traumatized. Slavery was abolished by the 13th Amendment. But freedom did not bring equality. Racism remained deeply rooted. Reconstruction began, but it was slow, violent, and fiercely resisted. 1 in every 4 Southern white men of military age had died. Entire communities were wiped out. Tens of thousands of men returned home with missing limbs. Many were never whole again, in body or mind. And the country remained deeply divided. The American Civil War ended on paper, but its consequences are still unfolding. This war forced America to reckon with its original sin. It tore off the mask. It exposed every contradiction. And it demanded that the country choose what it truly believed in. The cost was staggering. But the future was bought with that price. Not all battles are fought with guns. And not all wounds are visible. This was the war that forged modern America. And the memory of it must never fade. Please like, share, and subscribe if you believe in telling the truth behind history. This is the American Civil War. And this is the story that must be remembered. In the beginning, there were no borders, no passports, no races, no languages, just people. Homo sapiens. One species, one ancient family. Born not in a country, but in the cradle of East Africa, 200,000 years ago. They walked upright. They hunted. They loved. They feared the dark. They looked to the stars, even if they did not have words for them. But the earth is vast, and humans wander. They migrated north. They chased game. They chased seasons. They crossed deserts. They climbed mountains. They built boats and found new islands. Every place changed them. Not in spirit, but in body. In the bright sun of the equator, dark skin protected them. A shield against ultraviolet rays. In the cold grey skies of the north, paler skin evolved to soak in every drop of sunlight. Noses narrowed to warm the air. Hair coiled to cool the scalp. Bones shifted. Eyes adapted. Generations passed, and nature sculpted us. But race is not ancient. It is not scientific. It is not written in stone. Race is a story told by empires, by colonizers, by people who wanted to divide, because biologically, humans are almost the same. More similar than wolves, more similar than apes. There is only one human race. We just wear different skin. But something else was changing too. Something powerful and invisible. Language. At first it was sound. A grunt. A cry. A warning. Then rhythm. Then meaning. Then explosion. Clicks. Tones. Songs. Words. Language bloomed. It spread. It multiplied. It became over 7,000 forms of saying, I am here. I am alive. How did that happen? As we spread out, we changed how we spoke. We gave names to rivers. We told stories about stars. We described pain. We made poetry. Small groups created dialects. Dialects became languages. Languages became cultures. Words became legacy. But like race, language is not fixed. It moves. It evolves. It dies. It is born again. English is a good example. It is Germanic. It is Latin. It is French. It is Norse. It is messy. And it is everywhere. Language built everything. Laws. Books. memories, songs, myths, promises. But if language is how we speak, and race is how we look, then humanity is how we feel. Joy, pain, hope, grief. These do not need translation. From Ethiopia to Iceland, from Mongolia to Brazil, from deserts to ice, from temples to cities, we all cry the same. We laugh the same. We bury our dead the same. We are not strangers. We are reflections. So if you ask, why do we look so different? Why do we speak in so many ways? The answer is simple. We adapted. We survived. We changed. But we never stopped being one. We are the children of Earth, written in 7,000 languages, painted in every color, lived by 8 billion souls, still one. Hit like if you enjoyed this, sub to see more, share to support the channel. Throughout history, war has taken many forms. But perhaps no kind of battle tests the human spirit more than a siege. Trapped within walls, cut off from food, hope, and reinforcements. A siege is not just a battle of weapons, it is a battle of patience, fear, and survival. These are the greatest sieges in history. The siege of Troy, the Greeks versus the Trojans. It began with the abduction of Helen, and it lasted 10 years. The Greeks laid siege to Troy in a campaign filled with duels, deception, and death. Legends say it ended with the famous Trojan horse, a gift left at the city gates, hiding Greek soldiers within. When night fell, Troy was betrayed from the inside and burned to the ground. The siege of Babylon, the Persians versus the Babylonians. Cyrus the Great of Persia faced one of the most fortified cities in the world. Babylon's walls were tall, wide, and guarded by the